Welcome, curious minds. Today, we're taking a deep dive into an extraordinary set of sources.
Mm,
They explore the multifaceted leadership and profound societal reforms people attribute to Prophet Muhammad.
right.
We've got a LinkedIn article focusing on his core leadership qualities, an Islam Online piece detailing, the strategic planning during the really important Hijra,
Yeah, migration. Yeah.
and a Radiance Weekly article looking at his initiatives in social justice. Pretty groundbreaking stuff.
Absolutely. A good mix of sources.
So our mission is to unpack what made his leadership so impactful and maybe see how these historical insights offer lessons for leadership even today.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's jump right in. Our first source, it paints this picture of Prophet Muhammad as, well, an exceptional leader,
Hmm.
someone who transformed Arabia into this unified, thriving community.
Quite a transformation. Yeah.
He's described as a spiritual guide, political leader, military strategist, and social reformer, like all rolled into one.
It's a lot of hats to wear.
Definitely. And it says his qualities still inspire millions. So, looking at this overview, what really stood out to you? What was foundational?
Well, what's fascinating is how this source immediately gives this really broad view of leadership. It's not just spiritual.
Right.
It highlights these very practical, earthly roles he played. But the one thing that seems to underpin everything, it's his integrity and honesty.
Ah, okay.
He was known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy one, even before any divine revelation came.
So that reputation preceded his prophethood.
Exactly. And this wasn't just like a nice personality trait. This reputation, it earned him massive respect and trust. From his friends, sure, but also his enemies.
That's key.
It really was. The source emphasizes this integrity was the very foundation. It let him build strong relationships, establish a just society. It seems he just never compromised on his principles.
So it's more than just moral authority. It's like this deep trust became a practical tool for change. How did that integrity connect to how he dealt with people?
Precisely. And it ties right into his compassion and empathy. That's another huge piece.
Okay.
The source notes he genuinely cared for the poor, the sick, orphans, other vulnerable people in society.
So hands-on.
Very hands-on. He'd personally visit the sick, help with their needs, and was always encouraging others to be generous. And this, coupled with his humility, the source stresses he never sought personal gain or power that earned him real love and loyalty.
Right. It sounds like he wasn't some distant figurehead,
Right.
really involved in the community's daily life.
Yeah.
Did this sort of personal touch link up to a bigger vision?
Oh, absolutely. That's another vital aspect the source brings up.
Yeah.
His visionary approach.
Okay.
He had this clear, relentless vision, not just spiritual, but social, economic, political, too.
For the whole society.
Exactly. He envisioned a society built on justice, equality, brotherhood,
Yeah.
a place where everyone could actually thrive.
And how did he make that happen? Vision is one thing, execution is another?
Well, that's where his strategic thinking comes in. The source calls him a master strategist. He apparently analyzed situations really carefully, came up with effective solutions, and it mentions, while he consulted his companions, he made the final call.
So consultative but decisive.
Seems like it,
Yeah.
based on his judgment and, divine guidance, as the source puts it. And you see this skill across the board, military campaigns, negotiations, just managing that early Islamic state.
And I think you mentioned something earlier about his approach extending beyond just his own followers.
Yeah, that's another striking point. He's presented as a model for interfaith dialogue and cooperation.
How so?
He treated people of other faith with respect, with dignity. He invited them to Islam, sure, but crucially, he accepted their right to practice their own religion.
Which, for that time period.
Exactly. The source calls it revolutionary and ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful lesson, really, about how inclusive leadership can build bridges,
Yeah.
even today.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Our second source zooms right in on a specific event, the Hijra.
Ah, the migration to Medina, yes.
It frames it as this prime example of Prophet Muhammad's strategic genius. Paints him as this all-encompassing leader, father, statesman, everything.
It really was a defining moment.
So can you walk us through how this huge migration actually unfolded? What does it tell us about his planning, especially under, well, extreme pressure?
Yeah, it's a fascinating case study in strategy.
Yeah.
Moving his followers from, frankly, severe oppression in Mecca to a welcoming new place.
It wasn't just a sudden flight then.
Not at all. It came after a period of intense suffering. There was a 3-year boycott by the Quraysh.
The main tribe in Makkah.
Right,
Yeah.
a dominant, powerful tribe. It was so harsh they called it the Year of Sadness. He lost his uncle Abu Talib, his wife Khadija, huge personal losses.
Wow.
But despite all that, he was resolute. He knew he had to get his followers to safety, partly so Islam could actually spread.
So a long-term strategic necessity, not just immediate survival.
Definitely both. And it wasn't a snap decision. He started with reconnaissance alliance building.
Laying the groundwork.
Exactly. He even sent a small early group to Abyssinia Christian majority place, where the king, the Negus, was known to be fair.
Smart. Testing the waters.
And his choice of leaders for that group was apparently very deliberate. People like Uthman ibn Affan, Jafar ibn Abi Talib, his own daughter Ruqayya, calculated to minimize opposition back home.
Okay.
Then, as hostility grew in Makkah, he started sending feelers out to nearby areas. This led to some early converts in Yathrib, which became Medina, people from different backgrounds.
So connecting with potential allies way ahead of time, strategic networking almost.
You could say that. And then came these crucial alliances, the pledges of Aqaba.
Tell me about those.
First, 6 pilgrims from Yathrib meet him. They knew prophecies about a prophet coming, apparently, and they embraced Islam right away. That leads to the first pledge, a basic alliance.
Okay, an initial agreement.
Then later, the second pledge. This was the real game changer. 73 Muslims from Yathrib basically offered unconditional protection and support.
Wow, that's a serious commitment.
Huge. And the prophet then appointed 12 leaders from Yathrib to be responsible for their own community there, solidifying that structure.
So the stage was set, but the actual escape sounds like something out of a thriller.
It really does.
Yeah.
The Quraysh were furious about these alliances. People leaving Makkah, they plotted to assassinate him.
Right.
The source says Angel Gabriel warned him. So the prophet didn't sleep in his own bed that night. Ali ibn Abi Talib, his cousin, bravely took his place as a decoy.
Incredible courage.
Absolutely. He'd planned this for 3 days with his close companion, Abu Bakr. They even hired a guide, Abdullah ibn Urayqit, who wasn't Muslim, actually, but knew all the hidden routes.
Using every available resource.
Right. While the assassins surrounded his house, he slipped out, reciting verses, and just escaped. Miraculously, the source suggests.
And the other Muslims.
They mostly migrated slowly, often at night, to avoid detection. Though there's the famous story of Umar ibn al-Khattab, who just walked out in broad daylight, fearless.
Quite a contrast. So this whole hijra, it sounds like it depended on foresight, bravery, meticulous planning.
And immense trust. Trust in the plan, trust in companions like Abu Bakr and Ali, even trust in that non-Muslim guide. Their safe arrival in Medina, welcomed by the Ansar, the helpers there. It was just a massive turning point. Islam went from survival mode in a hostile place to having a secure base for growth.
It really stands out as a cornerstone moment.
Absolutely. Demonstrates incredible foresight, planning under pressure, and building those crucial alliances.
So that journey, that strategic move to Medina, it really laid the foundation for what came next. Building a state based on, well, unprecedented ideas of social justice.
Exactly.
Our third source uses some strong language. It calls Prophet Muhammad an illiterate human being who created the greatest revolution in the history of mankind.
High praise indeed.
And established the most civilized state the world has ever witnessed. Big claims. So beyond the migration, how did he actually build that just society on the ground?
Well, this part of the source material really paints a picture of a systematic overhaul, aimed at universal well-being.
Okay.
At its heart, the belief in one supreme God translated directly into how the state was run. An indiscriminate administration, the source calls it. Meaning basically no difference was made between Muslims and non-Muslims, or between male and female, or between one race and the other. In civil law, criminal law, across the board.
That's radical for the time.
Absolutely. Non-Muslim subjects were even governed by their own laws within limits and were protected. The prime example is the Charter of Madinah.
Right, you mentioned that.
It explicitly laid out rights and obligations, guaranteed freedom of religion, and actually declared Jews and Muslims one composite nation.
Composite nation. Wow.
And justice was impartial. Criminals were pursued, punished, no matter who they were related to. Even the Cambridge History of Islam apparently notes his great gift as a statesman in creating coherent policies and working institutions.
Okay, so legal equality was foundational. What about the economy? You often see huge gaps there.
He tackled that head on. Introduced measures to create economic balance, specifically reducing the gap between rich and poor. The main tools were zakat and tzedakah.
Zakat, that's the obligatory charity.
Right. But the source describes it less as charity and more as a socio-economic welfare scheme. The goal wasn't just relief, but empowering the poor towards self-sufficiency. Benefits citizens, not just the state.
Interesting distinction.
And the Quran itself details exactly who benefits the poor, the needy, debtors, travelers.
Yeah.
It's very specific, ensuring it reached those who needed it.
Okay, so beyond law and economics, what about specific groups? Often, reforms don't reach everyone equally. How did his vision impact, say, women or children?
This is where the sources highlight some truly transformative changes. Let's start with women's rights. The source calls this one of his greatest achievements.
How so?
Women were given equal status where natural law permitted, as the source puts it. They were much more benefited in marriage deals.
Okay.
Islam, according to this source, actually sanctioned women's right to own property for the very first time in history.
First time. That's huge.
Yeah. And it argues they actually benefit double in property rights if you look at the whole system.
Yeah.
Plus, meher, that gift from the groom to the bride, was made compulsory.
Giving them economic security within marriage.
Exactly. The force flat out calls him the real emancipator of women, ending practices where they were just treated like property.
And education.
Big focus there, too. He apparently took a keen interest, famously saying something like, if you educate one girl, it's like educating a whole family.
Powerful idea.
The source claims Islam was the first religion to really stress women's education, and it led to women specializing in law, science, medicine. His own household ladies, like Aisha, were known for being highly educated. Learning to read and write became compulsory for everyone, men and women.
Wow.
And his final Hajj speech specifically emphasized mutual rights between spouses and treating wives kindly. It was a consistent message.
A really profound shift from the norms of the time. What about children? Were their rights also addressed?
Definitely. Children were given property and inheritance rights, something, as this source points out, that isn't even universal today.
True.
There were specific injunctions against separating a child from its mother, even if the mother wasn't Muslim. He taught, honor your progeny and educate them well.
And was this just in law or also in practice?
The sources give lots of anecdotes suggesting a very gentle, personal approach, like advising a teenager to care for his parents instead of going to war, or correcting a boy caught stealing dates, not by punishing him harshly, but suggesting he just take the ones that fall naturally, comforting a scared child, teaching table manners.
Little things that show a deeper principle.
Exactly. Anas ibn Malik, who served him for 10 years as a boy, said the Prophet never once scolded him.
Remarkable.
And his kindness wasn't just for Muslim children. He'd visit sick Jewish children, told Muslims to protect children generally.
That inclusive compassion again. Now, the sources also mention slavery. That's a massive institution to tackle. How did he approach that?
This is another area where the source makes a very strong claim. It says he was the only person in history to end slavery and the slave trade without force or through legislation.
Without force or legislation? How?
It seems the approach was multifaceted. He strongly encouraged wealthy followers to buy slaves and then free them. He made powerful declarations like, if anyone kills a slave, then I will kill him, basically equating their lives.
Elevating their status significantly.
Absolutely. He ordered humane treatment, ensured they could achieve social and even political equality. Think of Bilal, the first muezzin, the one who calls to prayer, a former slave, highly respected.
Right.
Or Usama, son of a freed slave, became a commander and administrator. He also prohibited sexual exploitation and encouraged marriage between free people and enslaved people, breaking down those barriers.
So it was a cultural and moral shift encouraged from the top down.
Seems that way. A gradual dismantling through moral persuasion, setting examples, and changing the economic incentives rather than just a decree.
Okay, beyond these specific groups, what about just general conduct, the day-to-day morality of this new society?
He taught core principles like actions are judged by motives, intention matters most. He stressed politeness, calling it goodness itself, forbade gossip, finding faults in others, using bad names, taught patience. Patience is half of faith.
Foundational principles for community living.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the sources repeatedly call him a prophet of mercy, especially after victories. Often no revenge.
Really? Even against enemies who'd been cruel?
Apparently, yes. He'd propose peace, amnesty, even for people who had committed terrible acts against Muslims, like a figure named Hinda. His rules for warfare were also quite specific. No treachery, no mutilation, no killing non-combatants, women, children, the elderly. Protect the environment, too. Don't cut down fruit trees unnecessarily. Protect animals.
That environmental point is Interesting. Feels very modern.
It does. The source mentions him being very keen about environment protection, condemning cutting down certain trees, prohibiting killing useful creatures like bees, frogs, ants, because he recognized their benefits. Human life was sacred, and causing mischief, corruption, disorder was condemned.
And how did all this filter into the actual system of law and governance?
Well, governance was seen as a sacred trust, based on character, on service. Law wasn't just about punishment. The source says it aimed for interchanges into the personality of the criminal, not just making an example.
A rehabilitative idea?
Sort of, yeah.
Mm,
Divine law was firm, but there were concessions. Like that story of the man who stole bread because he was starving. Context mattered.
right.
And as we said, non-Muslims generally follow their own laws, unless a crime really disrupted social order. One more thing, mass education.
No.
He's called the first person to propagate knowledge among mankind as a whole. Remember the prisoners of war?
The ones freed if they taught literacy.
Exactly. Universalizing knowledge that used to be just for the elite, making learning compulsory. It was all part of building that just, informed society.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much leadership, strategy, social justice, law, ethics.
It's a remarkably comprehensive picture presented in these sources.
Exploring this figure who had so many roles, initiated such wide-ranging, honestly, revolutionary reforms, the depth of the material really does give you a fresh perspective.
It really does. And if you connect it all, the story these sources tell about Prophet Muhammad kind of raises a fundamental question, doesn't it?
This is.
What kind of lasting impact can a leader really have when their vision goes beyond just power? When it's truly rooted in deep integrity, strategic foresight, and this comprehensive commitment to justice for everyone in society?
That's definitely something to think about. Something for you, our listeners, to ponder as you navigate your own leadership roles, whether they feel big or small. Remember, sometimes the deepest insights, they really do come from the most unexpected places.